Good afternoon. On the next 20 minutes, I will present you some stuff around Office 365 groups. My name is Martina Grom. I'm from Europe, from Austria, and I'm an Office 365 MVP since a very long time. I was nominated 2011. I was one of the first 8 who got the MVP award on a product which wasn't even launched by then. So what we will do is go into Office 365 groups, and I will show you some PowerShells and also a guidance how you can implement groups in your organization and how you can start with that. It's the first time I do a 20-minute presentation, so I hope you don't mind if I run over time. Don't mark me down because of that, just leave after 20 minutes, okay? So what we will do here is I want to talk a little bit about an Office 365 groups concept because I work a lot with customers in current deployments around Office 365 groups, and many of them, out of an IT pro perspective, do one thing is disable groups. And this is very clear from an IT pro perspective because you say, I have no time to make a guidance around Office 365 groups. All my users get out of control. I have no naming policy. I don't know how to deal with that, and so on. And on the other side, if you disable group, you disable a lot of other beautiful features which you get within Office 365. So for instance, Planner, Teams, other stuff. So what I try to figure out with all of my customers is to find a group governance and a group strategy that you are safe from an IT pro perspective to implement groups in your organization. So what we do is, if I create an Office 365 groups concept within an organization, normally first I ask a couple of things. And one of the things is, are you good to go with a self-service? So self-service means my users can create groups as they want to create it. I don't care about names in there. I don't care about storage. I don't care on anything. And this could work too. If you have a good governance and users know how to implement a groups concept and also a naming policy, this is also something which would work very well in such a concept. On the other side, very often users say, okay, but I need a controlled approach. So that means I will leave group creation on by default in my tenant, but only a selected groups of users is allowed to enable that. So this could work too. So it could be an approval workflow, which I will show in my session on Thursday on groups creation, that a person sends a groups creation request to the manager, and the manager says, okay, should we create a group or should we not create a group, gives the approval or rejects it, and then the group is either created or not created, depending on the decision of the person who has the control about group creation. Another thing could be, and this is also something in a controlled way, is that you ask your users to go after a usage policy and have stuff like that, and also a naming policy, and to do that. From Microsoft perspective, or what Microsoft wants to do is an engagement around group self-service. And this is the first answer I get from all of my customers is, oh, no, we can't do that. We have to disable that because it gets out of control. On the other side, an IT pro has to control a lot of stuff already. So self-service could be a good thing if it's managed properly and made in a good way. So what we do here is, and this is also something I do with my customers, is first of all, I define a security group who is allowed to create groups. So that means by default, group creation is disabled. I build up a security group, and in that security group are the persons who are allowed to create groups in the future and control the group creation there. The second point is, and this is depending on the tenant size and how many users you have within the tenant, is setting up a naming policy. And that means, for instance, if you are a multinational and you work abroad and you have departments and organizations in different countries and so on, you might wish to implement kind of a guidance in form of a naming policy, which gives the first 3 characters in any group name is the country or the department or anything else. From my experience, this highly depends on the size of the tenant and also the size of groups which might be created within there. I will answer questions soon. 1 second. Naming policy is currently in public preview. So it's not here for all tenants, but it will be there soon. The naming policy, which is currently present, covers only the exchange naming conventions. So you're good to go if all of your users create groups out of Outlook, then you have a proper naming policy. But what about the users who create Planner or create the SharePoint site or anything else? So this is also something you have to consider. The next thing is set up an expiration policy. And an expiration policy helps you that groups which are not used will be deleted after a certain amount of time. It could be an orphaned group, so that means a group without an owner, or it could be a group which hasn't any usage over the last 6 months. And the expiration policy is also present already there, and it helps us free up your storage and give you an expiration date for 31 days, for instance, where the group owner gets a notification that the group will be deleted within that date. What happens if the group owner passes the deletion date? Then the next thing takes in place. That means soft delete and restore. So if somebody accidentally deletes a group or the group was deleted because of the expiration policy with soft delete and restore, you can safely restore the whole group and have it back in your tenant. From a security perspective, the last thing you have to consider if you go with groups is classification and labeling. That means if you set up a proper usage policy and also a classification policy throughout the group creation, people know that it might be a group with sensitive content in that. And they can decide, okay, what content do I have in there? And I'm not allowed to share that content externally, for instance. So you can do that as well. 20 minutes hard. So how do I start? What I love about Office 365, it's a service. And you see you have a lot of PowerShells to install and a lot of different PowerShells to install. For all the groups, we need Azure Active Directory. So there's a V1, which is the old MS Online PowerShell, which probably every one of you have installed on this machine. And there is a V2. But to make it even better, there's a V2 preview. So the latest of the latest version. And I can't recommend you using the preview version, but this is actually the version I'm showing you today. Okay, so you go with that. And then on the other side, you have to install all of those new PowerShell versions from the PowerShell gallery, which is quite easy because you simply install it from the PowerShell gallery with install Azure AAD preview and so on. And one pro tip, you can't run the V2 and the V2 preview on the same machine. So you have to decide, will you go with the fancy preview stuff or will you stay with the stable current release? And to make it even better, you need other modules as well. So for instance, you need the SharePoint Online module, which comes as an MSE package. And then if you want to do something on Skype for Business Online, you have to go with the exe file for Skype for Business Online PowerShells. And Exchange Online is a remote PowerShell, so you don't have to install anything on that. So this is the mix-up in the management features you have in there. From the group policy, we will start first with a short demo about how it looks like when you restrict the group creation. And that means, first of all, so just to step you through the PowerShell, you don't see anything, right? I apologize. So, that's the beauty of duplicate screens in PowerShell. So first of all, we step through that and we get a list of all our Azure AD groups. So we have here a couple of security groups in our tenant, and you see here, this is the object ID of the group who will be allowed to create groups in the future. So this is the first step to get there. And then I just click on that one group to get the object ID from that. And you see here, I just have to copy that object ID, as I already did here, and then I can set up this group in the PowerShell. I already did that, but if we step to that, I load that in my template. So this works, and then the next template, and when I set the setting, you see here, okay, this object is already set up because I have already created that in my setup, but if you do it on a new one, you see here that you have the setting in there. And when you step through those processes, you can control it afterwards with the Active Directory values, and here you see if we load all the values in there, you see we have some of the values which are currently set up. So you see we have, for instance, a custom block word list we need for the naming convention. We have the classification stuff here, and here we have our group ID, which we copied earlier, and this is the group which is allowed to create groups in the future in our tenant, and only persons in that group can do that. You can also set up that security group as a dynamic security group if you want that, and use that for the future. And then if we go back to the slides, and for setting up the naming convention, you see here, first of all, we have to set up a naming convention, and that means the naming convention can have suffixes in there, departments in there, object ID in there, and so on. But don't overdo that because you have a restriction in the name of the group, so don't create that long names in there. And also, you can also have a custom block words check in your naming policy. That means you can block words like CAO, salary, NDA, or whatever words you want to block in your naming policy, and have that in there. And as always, any IT admin is able to override that settings at any time. So if you need a group which is called only info without any naming convention, you can safely do that as an IT admin in the portal. So, and if we look at the PowerShell in there, how that works, it's the same. First of all, we load the template and go in there, and then you can go in there, and I'm just keeping that because I'm not doing that. But what we see here, we have here a prefix-suffix naming requirement, and my only requirement is that the name of the group contains GRP, so for group. What I can also do there is that I say, okay, it has to have group, underline department, underline group name, underline country, yada, yada, yada. So you can add that to your group naming policy very safely. And then you can also set up a custom block word list. And here is just some samples in there where you see, okay, MVP is not allowed, HR is not allowed, RD is not allowed, CIO is not allowed, and NDA is also a word which is not allowed in our naming policy to have it in there. What else can you do here? You can also enable standard block words, which is a list which is provided by Microsoft. You can't find out the words which are currently in the list. There are some currently really bad words, which I won't say here on a recorded session, but it could be very useful to have them as well. So just enable them, and then you can set the directory setting and apply the group naming convention on your group. And that means if you try it out and the user goes to Outlook Web Access, open up the groups, types in a name with a bad word in it, he's not allowed to create a group. Or if he opens the group and wants to have another naming convention, the naming convention is automatically applied to the group and you have it finally safe in there. So you can do that. And also, you don't need to make pictures of the slides because in the slide deck you have all the PowerShell scripts in there. And then you can also go there and say, okay, these are the groups I want to have there. And for instance, if you have such a naming convention in your tenant, so this is a name which is not allowed to be created in there. So, next thing is the expiration policy. And the expiration policy is, first of all, you have to set an expiration timeline. Then you have to set the notifications, which might be set to the owner of the group. And then you have to set up a fallback email address, just to show that, how that looks like. And then you apply the policy as well. And the fallback email address is especially important if you have an orphaned group. So a group without an owner where nobody filed in as a new owner, you have to set up that fallback email address, which is normally an email address from one of the administrators. And you see, this is supported even in V1 release, so you can do that as well. How does it look like from a PowerShell perspective? To go back in there, you see here, first of all, if we set up the policy, and that means in the policy, we see here the lifecycle policy is valid for 31 days. It goes over to all groups we have in our tenant, and the alternate authentication email, notification email, is the admin account of that tenant. And if you have that set up, you're safe to go with an expiration policy and see that throughout the service. How does it look like from a user experience perspective? If we look there, this is what the user gets, or the owner of the group gets. That means he gets here an information by email which says, okay, the group will expire in a couple of days, renew it or keep it. And then after the owner skipped the deletion date and the group was deleted, you can go here and say, okay, I want to restore the group, which takes in place with the soft delete function of the group, and have it there. And if you renew the group, you get also a notification that the group is already safe, restored, and have it in there. So this is how the expiration policy looks like. Next thing and last thing is how you can soft delete your groups and how you can do that and what is the purpose of that. So any group which is deleted within can be restored within 30 days after that. And you can also, if it's necessary, hard delete a selected group. So it could be the case that you have to delete the group without the possibility to restore it, and do that. How does it look like to restore a group which is soft deleted? And this is also, if we step through there, first of all, I look at all of my groups. And I have here my groups, and for instance, which one do we want to delete? Let's take the Yammer one. So I just fill in there. So I remove my Azure AD group, the Yammer group, and you see it's safely deleted. And then I can go there and pick up all deleted groups in the tenant. And this takes a while because this is my demo tenant and I do that a lot. So you see all fancy demo names in there. But what I can do there is I want to restore the important Yammer group in there. So the next feature in there is just restore the Yammer group. And after I have restored it, you also see it's safely restored. To give you a short notice, this was an empty Office 365 group, so it was quite quick If you have a large group with a lot of content in there, it can take up to 24 hours that the group is restored, if there are many files in there and so on. So don't make a conclusion from a demo group to your live groups in there. And if you really want to hard delete the group, you can safely go with that commandlet where you see also, I want to delete that directory and have that deleted in my tenant as well. So this was a quick overview about that. And I saw I had too many slides for that. But if you're interested in going into more detail and step through more of the PowerShell commandlets and also see the workflow we have built there, I have another session on Thursday. It's 45 minutes, so I have more time there. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. But I think I have first free up the presenter table for the next presenter. Thank you.